समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
I know an election campaign is going on in Bengal, and right now we are in North Bengal, which goes for polling in the first phase. But we are not talking about elections today. We are talking about a very important strategic issue for India, which has also become a hot button issue in this election because the Prime Minister is speaking repeatedly about the Siliguri Corridor. I stand at one edge of the Siliguri Corridor, the edge of the part of the corridor where it's the narrowest. This is called the chicken's neck. Unfortunately, it's not something that I like, at least published on the platforms that I edit. So as far as I'm concerned, I try to avoid chicken's neck because that is not the right expression. The right expression is, yes, it's an isthmus kind of territory. Maybe it's a choke point for the adversaries for India, but for India, it is a very vital link to at least 5 crore of fellow Indians, 5 crore of fellow Indians in 8 states. That is all the 7 states in the Northeast and in the original definition of Northeast, and also Sikkim. And then, of course, to Dwars, which is the easternmost part of West Bengal, and Darjeeling as well. You cannot go anywhere there without passing what is called as Siliguri Neck. See the map of West Bengal and see the map of India, and see this Saras crane kind of territory. That is where West Bengal and India are at their narrowest, and the narrowest part of this is about 21 to 22 kilometers. That's all. On one side, there is Bangladesh, on the other, there is Nepal. Where I stand, at the edge of the village of Phansi Dewa, you can see the border fencing behind me. From there, as a crow flies, or even as you drive, this is flat land to the other end, it's not more than 21 to 22 kilometers. When you go to the other end, you will come to the Nepal border. That will not be very far from where Naxalbari is. In fact, it's almost next to Naxalbari. See the Nepal border checkpoint there. The picture is on your screens. The distance between where I stand, once again, this is Bangladesh right behind me, just 100 yards behind me, not even 100 yards, maybe 50 yards behind me, and 21 kilometers in front of me. This is to the east of the Siliguri Neck, and the other side will be to the west. That's how this becomes a very narrow border. If you see the entire Siliguri Neck, I will not call it chicken's neck once again. If you call it Siliguri Neck, then it is about 170 kilometers at the outside. Where does it begin? There may be some arguments. Where does it end? There will be arguments. Roughly, you would say about 170 kilometers is when the channel starts to narrow. Channel means the territorial channel starts to narrow. And the narrowest it gets is 21, 22 kilometers, as from this point to the other side. The widest it gets is about 60 kilometers. Then try and understand the sensitivity of this place. This place where I stand, Bangladesh right behind me, 20 odd kilometers, 21 to 22 kilometers. On the other side, right exactly opposite, is Nepal. That is 2 countries. Right up north is China. That's about 130 kilometers away as you go driving. As the crow flies, maybe 30, 35 kilometers. That is China. Then you have Bhutan. Bhutan will be a little bit southeast, so Bhutan. So Bhutan, China, Nepal, Bangladesh. 4 international borders are within 100 kilometers of this place as you are driving, and if you are flying, as a crow flies, it's much less. The most important factors for us, however, at this moment are Bangladesh and Nepal, between which we are stuck with this narrow territory of land through which so much of our logistics pass. So much of our logistics and communications pass are trunk railway lines which serve the northeast. These serve civilians as well as a lot of the armed forces there in Arunachal Pradesh, in Mizoram, in Nagaland, in Manipur, every place. Also, this logistics channel serves the people there. I told you about 5 crore people. They depend on it. It is through this narrow piece of territory that India has at least 2 trunk railway lines, lots of other railway lines, 2 trunk railway lines. These are being expanded and strengthened and fortified. Also, 2 major highways and some crisscrossing highways as well. It is through somewhere here that Asian Highway 2 also passes. Asian Highway 2 goes into Nepal, also goes into Bangladesh. So you might ask me, if this is only 21, 22 kilometers, it's a very narrow strip of land. In a case of hostilities breaking out, it will be very difficult to hold on to it. It's never easy to hold on to territory when a determined adversary pushes and you have very little area to fall back on, because as we know in military science, in the first attacks, usually if it's determined and large enough, the defender does fall back a little bit. So does India have a place to fall back? Now, this is something that the armed forces, their leaders have been thinking about since 1960. It's about thereabouts that the new corps in Siliguri was set up. That is the 33rd Corps. I'm not giving away any facts that are not publicly known. You can get it on Wikipedia. Over time, this corps has expanded, size, scope, formations under it. One more mountain strike corps has come up in Panagarh, way south in West Bengal, but it's there, its formations are there. And then not far from here, Hashimara Air Base has come up to the east of Siliguri. That is where one of the squadrons of Rafales is based. Once again, no secrecy about it, publicly known fact. That's also where at least one large unit of S-400 missiles operates on. India takes this very seriously. Now, there are 2 aspects of it. We can hold forth on it for an hour, but there are 2 aspects of it which I want to talk about. One, what is the solution? Because this is the territory we got. That's how the British divided up the subcontinent, or they drew lines on the map. This is what we have got. It's not possible to take territory from here or territory from there. There might be, in the best of all worlds, there might be situations where countries come together, they form common markets, or maybe they even exchange land. That moment, unfortunately, in the subcontinent has not yet arrived. And by the look of it, it seems not plausible that such a thing will happen. However, creative solutions have been looked at. India and Bangladesh, for example, have an agreement. This is the agreement. I will call it, I will just give you the specific article. It is Article 8 of the Trade Agreement of 1980 signed between India and Bangladesh. I will read you the relevant portion. It says, both countries, and I quote, agree to make mutually beneficial arrangements for the use of their waterways, railways and roadways for commerce between the 2 countries and for passage of goods between 2 places in one country through the territory of the other. That's the important thing. When I say that, I take you south from this place about 60 kilometers. Go south on the same highway, National Highway 27, you stop at a place called Chopra, Chopra, nothing to do with Yash Chopra or B.R. Chopra. It's the name of a village which has now grown into a small town, Chopra. When you go to the small town of Chopra, right next to that is the Bangladesh territory. And see once again the Bangladesh map. Just as our territory, India's map has its head, has its crown, that is all of Kashmir. Bangladesh territory also has a kind of a crown, or something that looks like a crown, bit on the one side, and that is the Rangpur district. That is what juts into Indian territory. And what juts into Indian territory there is called Tetulia Corridor. Tetulia Corridor in Rangpur district of Bangladesh. Tetulia Corridor juts into India. It's like a thick finger that's coming into India. and even National Highway 27 or our transport, our logistics going into the rest of India from there, from Chopra, which is in North Dinajpur district of West Bengal, not even in Siliguri. Before that, as I told you, 60 kilometers to the south towards the mainland from here. From there, any transport, railways, everything have to go around this Bangladeshi territory of Tetulia and then reach New Jalpaiguri. It takes them nearly 90 kilometers. There's been a proposal for a long time that's been discussed often enough between India and Bangladesh. It's waiting for the perfect moment. And the proposal is the Chopra. And that's the reason I mentioned Chopra and I took you at least visually there. You can see it on the map. From Chopra, you can build a corridor across the Tetulia territory. If you build a corridor across the Tetulia territory, it's just about 4 to 5 kilometers. And that takes you straight to Jalpaiguri district, Mainaguri. What that means is that what is today 90 kilometers of driving and most of it through this narrowing corridor actually bypasses all of that and you get to Jalpaiguri in 4 to 5 kilometers. So this cuts 84 kilometers from a 90 kilometer route. Now this agreement has been there, the basic agreement that both the countries will work together to help each other find better logistics, even if it comes to using their waterways, their railways, or other facilities, say highways, through their territory. This is an agreement signed between India and Bangladesh in 1980. It was a gesture following this agreement that in 2011, India formally leased, there was always a controversy, but India formally leased the Teen Bigha corridor so Bangladesh could get easy access to their large enclave on our side. This is a very tiny corridor. That's why it's called just Teen Bigha. The name indicates how small this is. And this tiny corridor that India gave to Bangladesh on lease as part of this goodwill gesture or in pursuance of Article 8 of this agreement of 1980, that gives Bangladesh easy access to the enclave of Dahogram, Angarpota, just next door to their borders, and they have more than 1 lakh people living there. But this is a big convenience for Bangladesh. It is not far from this territory. It is not in some other distant part of West Bengal. This is very much part of North Bengal, not very far from here. In fact, if I go up north the same route and then turn east towards Assam, go towards the Dwars, that is where we will find Teen Bigha. If in our travels we have the time, we will even show up there and show you some pictures from there. Now that is one possibility, but that possibility is in the future. Meanwhile, what is India doing? India is strengthening its current communication and transport network. Now the expectation was that in reciprocity, Bangladesh will let India build this Tetulia corridor. So that will resolve India's problem. Now, okay, balloon goes up, a war breaks out, China is involved at the other end. You don't know. Any country will hesitate to let you have that easy access to your own vital areas. But there will be treaties, there will be agreements, and there will be some solemn commitments. It will be enormously better than not having that solution. When that will happen, I don't know. In fact, there have been ideas that India should build it. India should let Bangladesh benefit from it. With this, India-Bangladesh trade will go up. India can also compensate Bangladesh in many other ways, but those things will happen when India-Bangladesh relations are at their peak at some point. Those peaks come and then the troughs arise, so you have to wait for the right moment. The Dahogram, Angarpota, the population in 2014 approximately was about 17,000. We don't know how much it is right now. It's obviously much more. It is through this narrow territory that we have multiple highways, an expressway, trunk railways, and also most importantly, your petroleum oil lubricant pipelines. It is also through this territory that crude produced in Assam is brought to, say, Barauni refinery in Bihar. It is also through this territory that finished goods are sent all over the northeast. So there are oil pipelines going either way, going both ways. And also these days, it's very important, broadband cables, communication networks, all of this goes through this. Now, what is it that India worries about? India doesn't worry so much about another country coming and invading it and trying to cut this off, because for that, the Chinese, they are the only likely suspects. The Chinese have to come down the Himalayas from Sikkim side. That will be very tough. Climbing that high up and coming down, they are going to be exposed to a lot of fire from the Indian side. You might say that warfare has changed right now. Things can be done long distance, but human beings can't be sent long distance as long as there are human beings on the other side willing to defend. So that's not going to be easy. What India worries about more right now is something that becomes very politically polarizing here, and that is something that BJP people keep talking about. You can have different views on it, but they say that demographics of this region, not Siliguri, but say until about Chopra and a little bit beyond, coming in from Bihar, from Kishanganj, Purnia, but more Kishanganj, those are inhabited very heavily by Bengali speaking Muslims who have located into India or who have immigrated into India, or if you so wish to say, if you are from the BJP, because that is the BJP's preferred usage, infiltrated into India. So they would say that the ethnic mix or the demographic mix of the Bangladeshi territories obviously is Bengali Muslim, but also Indian territories in the middle, not where I am standing, not in Siliguri. Indian territories where this narrow passage begins, and also the Nepalese territory bordering it. They are all the same. They all have the same ethno-religious mix. So what will they do? I would like to believe that all Indian Muslims, no matter what language they speak, are as nationalist as any of us. No problem. But at the same time, those who worry, because people people in the government need to worry about everything and they have to discount everything. They worry about the fact that just a few tens of thousands of farmer agitators or agitating farmers had been able to lay siege to all the approaches to Delhi, and those are big highways, and for a long time nothing could move. And they say that suppose in some situation a similar kind of action is carried out, it can be an instigation, it can be subversion, then what will we do, particularly if a war is about to break out or if we are under pressure either in Arunachal Pradesh or in Sikkim? It will only happen from the Chinese. Most unlikely that the Bangladeshis will use their military. Impossible, nearly impossible that Nepal would use their military. Both will say we will not let our territory to be used against India's interests. All that will be said. At the same time, the fear of being blocked out. And a recent example that is quoted is that at Shujapur, just a few days back during this campaign, the judicial officers who were part of SIR process, they were surrounded and they were gherawed, and that led to a blocking of the highway, National Highway 12, for 2 full days. So the point is, if National Highway 12 could be blocked for 2 full days, then this could also be blocked for a few days. And that is a challenge that you may not think is very likely. It may not be very likely. It may be most unlikely, but that is something to think about. So many new, some expensive ideas are coming up, one of which also is to build right across this corridor underground rail lines and maybe an underground highway as well. That is by way of strengthening this node. However, it still doesn't resolve the geographical problem or the problem of the narrow geographical space in the middle. How National Highway 27 runs? It comes from Purnia, from Bihar, runs right along Bihar-Bengal border, then comes into Bengal, and then it has to go around this Tetulia territory of Bangladesh and then reach Jalpaiguri. Now, there are innovative ideas, but once again, they will involve Bangladeshi territory. There is an idea, for example, of a hilly Mahendraganj corridor. Hilly, if you read military history, it is something that features a lot in the 1971 war. Hilly sector is one across Balurghat from the Indian side, that is further south from Chopra. Hilly sector is where probably the only sector where Pakistani army fought really well. It was one brigade commander whose troops fought well under him, and they were able to continue fighting till the 11th. That was the longest battle, longest, bloodiest, and toughest battle in the 1971 war. So there is this corridor from Hilli to Mahendraganj, but once again, that depends on the mood on the Bangladesh side and also on the mood of India-Bangladesh relations. Now, the threat from the Chinese side, that we will talk about in a separate episode of Karta Clutter, not to clutter this one too much, because ultimately the cause of concern about this territory comes not from Bangladesh, not from Nepal. It comes from China sitting up there. See the map of India, see Sikkim, see where China is, see the Sikkim-Bhutan tri-junction. That is where the Chinese had tried to come when the Doklam crisis took place. What happens if they come there? If they come up to what they now claim to be their claim line, and if they come up there, they come to a place called Jamperi Ridge, that is then the crest of the Himalayas, which means they are on the top of the Himalayas. Then the distance from here may be 130 kilometers, but they can see the plains of Siliguri. They can even monitor your troop movements, your formation movements, your equipment movements. Now you can watch a long distance, particularly from a high altitude. That is what India has been trying to prevent. But the concern that the Chinese someday, it's not today, not tomorrow, not day after tomorrow, not 5 years, maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, they might get the idea of cutting you off or choking you off. That is what India is preparing for. And there's no time to prepare for what might happen 50 years later now, because defense of a country, particularly a country of so much substance and so much consequence as India, the defense has to be thought of for the many future generations, not for today, not for this generation. And that's why you find, as you drive in this region, you find cantonments everywhere. People keep saying, oh, Kashmir is the it is the most spoken untruth that Kashmir is the most militarized zone in the world, or at least in the subcontinent. No, Kashmir is not. Just drive around Siliguri, just drive around the highways there, don't even go sideways, and you will see cantonments on both sides of the highways. If there is any place that deserves the title of the most militarized zone in the world, it is this. It is this corridor. So India is not complacent here. If anything, just recently, India has set up 3 more military stations, and see where they are. One is at Kishanganj. Kishanganj is in Bihar, but not far from the borders. Again, a big migrant territory, not far from Bangladesh border, and also very close to sensitive zones abutting Bangladesh and our West Bengal border. So one garrison is being set up at Kishanganj. The second garrison is coming up, new garrison at Chopra. Once again, you know what the sensitivities and vulnerabilities are. And the third one, you have to go a bit far, you have to go up north and then hook east and go a little bit deeper, somewhere along the north bank of Brahmaputra River in Dhubri Gwalpada area. In that area, Bamuni, that is the third big military cantonment that's now being set up. So these 3 new military stations are now coming up now as India looks to protect itself or to ensure its most sensitive communication zones.